want to just go through this Uranium One story because
You got to cover
this
for my
is,
wife.
yeah, I mean, let's just look at this. This is what you're going to get now. And some people speculate that the reason why Manafort came out with this is because this Uranium One story was getting too intense. And the deep state needed to throw people off the trail.
Mueller announced the indictments because a story from 2015 got partially validated in the Hill, and that was going to throw off this slow motion coup that the NSA and the CIA are waging against the guy who, by the way, if we ignore all this nonsense, has given them absolutely everything they want.
If you look at the past 2 or 3 weeks, the number of, Fox News, Breitbart, other sundry YouTube channels purporting to have a different ideology, have been doing stories on this Uranium One. Here's where the Uranium One story came from. The uranium story came from, and there's been actually really good reporting on this, and I think some of it comes from Josh Green in his story that he did on Bannon. But Steve Bannon understood 2 or 3 years ago that what he needed to do, and I think I'm paraphrasing, he needed to basically inject the virus into the system. And he knew that because of cutbacks, there was not a lot of investigative reporting that was happening in mainstream reporting outlets. So he set up this foundation that funded this book called Clinton Cash. And the same guy did one about Jeb Bush as well. Clinton Cash outlined this supposed Clinton scandal that suggested that Hillary Clinton took a bribe in the form of a donation to the Clinton Foundation to approve the selling of uranium to the Russian government, a Russian-owned energy company. And the New York Times did a story on this because they made a deal with this foundation that was doing investigative reporting to cover this stuff. Now, they didn't particularly do a very good job in vetting it. They just basically bought it wholesale.
And that was his theory. I mean, really, it was, and there was another part of it just to add to it. The other insight that he had that was very astute was not just that there's a major cutback in investigative resources, and that on one hand, for the base and for the crazy people, you should be, even more extreme than Limbaugh and push it to the limit. But to hit middle America or whatever that middle is, it should be presented as objective and clinical.
Yes.
Which is very smart.
And you can read the Joshua Green piece if you don't want to read the whole book on Bannon, and it outlines this. He talks about how he did this, his machinations. And this piece came out, I don't know, last summer. And so here is, for example, Judge Jeanine Pirro. Oh wait, no, this is about this clip is about the Trump about the dossier. This is coming out at the same time as the dossier that the Clinton, through the campaign, through their lawyer, through GPS, funded the Trump Oppo research.
And this matters. Why?
I have no idea.
Such a bizarre.
Some people claim that is also Russian collusion, but I think interviewing a couple of Russians and paying them for information is not quite the same thing.
How about the My Wife Russia story? It's the real story of the campaign.
But nevertheless, let's go through this uranium story because if you hear any more of it, you should know what it is before it's sort of like, what do you call it? What's the word? Metastasizes in your brain. So this is around a 2010 uranium deal. Here's Donald Trump. Never seen such Republican anger and unity as I have concerning the lack of investigation on Clinton-made fake dossier. It's not clear that dossier is fake. Uranium to Russia deal 33,000 plus deleted emails, Comey fix, and instead they looked at phony Trump-Russia collusion, which doesn't exist. Dems are using this terrible and bad for our country witch hunt for evil politics. But the R's are now fighting back like never before. There's so much guilt by Democrat/Clinton, and now the facts are pouring out. Do something. Take to the streets. All right, so here's the uranium deal. In 2010, there was this Russian nuclear energy agency called Rosatom. And they bought a controlling stake in a Canadian-owned company that would mine, a mining company essentially. Maybe they had other business, called Uranium One. The Canadian company had mining licenses for 20% of the U.S. uranium extraction capacity. All right? The agreement, because it was a foreign company, had to be signed off by the Committee on Foreign Investment. Okay? There are 9 agencies associated with that. There were 9 members on that committee. All of them have to unanimously approve of it. Clinton did not sit on that committee. There was a representative from the State Department, presumably. The deal also had to be approved by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and then ultimately had to be signed off by Barack Obama.
Allahu Akbar.
This uranium cannot leave the country. It cannot leave the country. In fact, the only part of the uranium, some of it can go uranium yellow cake, can be processed in Canada before being returned to the United States for use in nuclear power plants. In other words, they just own a financial investment in the domestic to domestic sales of uranium in this country. They don't control our uranium. It's just a business that they're involved in. They could have bought into, I don't know, a car company that was selling cars. The donation, it was like $140 million donation, apparently, given by Frank Juistra, with a G. I may be pronouncing his name. He gave something like $145 million to the Clinton Foundation. He sold his company to Uranium One 3 years before Uranium One sold essentially themselves to the Russian company. He had given that money, I don't know when he gave that money, but he had no interest in Uranium One at the time that he gave that money. Apparently in 2010, though, Bill Clinton did receive $500,000 from a Russian bank to give a speech at a conference in Moscow, which seems to be just classic Clinton cash raking.
Well, we can always acknowledge during this whole process that the Clintons, of course, did, sat on a board of a private internet scam college. Like
yes,
this. Yeah,
yes, all of this. But the point being that the reason why we're discussing this now is because people want to distract from what's going on with Trump, make it cloudy, and B, people who are desperate to, in some way, have themselves be perceived as not being lunatics, lunatic dum-dums, keep pushing this as a way of trying to, I don't know, make themselves feel better about themselves. The Seth Rich fell through. The Pizzagate, I think, is legit, though.
That's still happening.
And all the other stuff.
I just want, at a certain point, I wish my wife would release the kids and let them get on with life, but she won't.
Well, it's because she can't use the latch because of her Parkinson's. Hi, folks. Sam Seder here. We still need your help on our Patreon page. YouTube ads have come back, but not nearly as much as we had before. So if you can help us out, any little bit helps. Head over to our Patreon page right at this URL, and you'll help us keep helping you by making videos